The Dreamlifter is one of the most unusual aircraft in the world. It was built from an ordinary Boeing 747 with the fuselage widened to fit entire sections of fuselage, wings, and other parts of the Boeing 787, the Dreamliner. There are only 4 of these aircraft in operation, all dedicated to carrying parts between Boeing's factories across the United States and around the world. That day, the destination was McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas, home to Spirit Aerosystems, the company responsible for building sections of the fuselage, wings, and other parts of the 787. McConnell has 2 parallel runways of nearly 3,660 meters each, more than enough for an aircraft the size of the Dreamlifter. A few kilometers away, there is another, much smaller airport used mainly by general aviation and business jets, Colonel James Jabara Airport. Jabara's runway is only 1,860 meters long, and here's the most important detail of the whole story. The heading of that runway differs from the heading of McConnell's runway by just 1 degree. That almost perfect similarity between the 2 runways would be the first link in a chain of errors that no one saw coming. During the flight, the pilot noticed something strange on the panel. The first officer's instrument display showed intermittent glitches, small failures that came and went with no clear explanation. This made the crew distrust the reliability of the automatic navigation system, the very system that was programmed to guide the aircraft to the correct runway at McConnell using the satellite signal. As they approached Wichita, the pilot got the impression that the aircraft was too high for that point of the approach. On previous flights, the visual approach had brought the aircraft to a different altitude than he expected. Faced with this doubt, the pilot made a decision that seemed reasonable at the time: to switch off the automatic navigation and fly the rest of the approach visually, guiding the aircraft by eye, as if driving by the runway lights. At night, seen from the air, one lit runway looks a lot like another. The pilot spotted, to the left, lights that matched what he expected to find and headed toward them. He was certain those lights were McConnell's runway. They were not. The Dreamlifter touched down at around 9:30 at night, local time on November 20th, 2013. The landing itself went well, with no scares and no apparent difficulty. To the pilots, everything seemed to have gone right, but seconds after slowing down on the runway, something started to feel off. The length of the runway, the surrounding landmarks, the position of the nearby buildings, nothing matched exactly what they expected to see at McConnell. McConnell's control tower, still waiting for the Dreamlifter to arrive on the correct runway, tried to make contact by radio. It was at that moment that the first hesitant confirmation came that something had gone wrong. "Yeah, we landed at the other airport," said one of the pilots. The tower replied with a direct question whether they could confirm they were on the ground at another airport in the area, the Beach Factory Airport, which sits between Jabara and McConnell. "We think so," the pilot answered. He was wrong again. The pilot's confirmation did not hold up. The coordinates the crew gave over the radio did not match the coordinates of the Beach Factory Airport, the place where they believed they were. McConnell's tower asked whether the aircraft had made a straight-in approach or had circled before landing, trying to reconstruct the route from the pilot's answers. It took about 4 minutes of conversation, questions, and cross-checks until the crew asked for the exact frequency and coordinates of the Beach Factory Airport to compare with their own location. It was only then that the true scale of the error became clear. They were not at the Beach Factory Airport. They were at a 4th, completely different place, Colonel James Jabara Airport, even farther from the planned destination. In other words, 2 experienced pilots flying one of the most specialized aircraft in the world spent whole minutes unsure of which of the 4 airports in the area they had just landed at. And it was only then that the true seriousness of the problem began to emerge, because the runway they were parked on was far too short for that aircraft to take off again. With their location finally confirmed, the seriousness of the situation became clear to everyone involved. Jabara's runway is 1,860 meters long. A Dreamlifter, at normal maximum weight, needs roughly 2,800 meters of runway to take off safely. That means the runway it was parked on had about 2/3 of the length considered ideal for a takeoff of that size. Beyond the insufficient length, there was a second concern. The concrete structure of Jabara's runway was not designed to bear the weight of an aircraft the size of a 747. This led local authorities to close the airport for several hours just to inspect whether the pavement had suffered any structural damage from the landing. The city of Wichita publicly confirmed that no one was hurt and that there was no significant property damage. But the question left hanging was, at the same time, simple and hard to answer: how do you get that aircraft out of there? The answer began with a phone call to the engineers at Atlas Air in New York. After the incident, Atlas Air opened an internal investigation to understand exactly where the chain of decisions had failed. The result showed that the error was not one person's fault. It was a sequence of small failures that together became large ones. The first failure was the absence of a detailed briefing about the other airports in the area before the approach, including information about the specific lighting system of runway 19 left at McConnell, which could have helped the pilots visually confirm that they were in the right place. The second failure came from the control tower itself. According to the investigation, the moment the pilot switched off the automatic navigation to fly the visual approach, that deviation should have been noticed by air traffic control, which could have alerted the crew in time to correct course. That did not happen. After identifying these failures, Atlas Air put a new internal rule in place. From that incident on, the company's pilots were required to keep the approach guided by instruments even in good visibility until passing the final approach point. No last-minute visual decisions, even when everything looks familiar, but before any new rule could take effect, there was still the immediate problem to solve: getting a Boeing 747 out of a runway far too short for it. While the investigation moved forward, an Atlas Air engineering team worked on a more urgent problem, calculating whether it was really possible to get that aircraft out of there safely. The answer depended entirely on the weight of the aircraft. The lighter the aircraft, the shorter the runway distance needed to take off. The Dreamlifter had arrived at Jabara still with a significant amount of fuel, and on top of that, it was not carrying any fuselage parts on that particular leg of the trip. That already helped, but it was not enough. The engineering team calculated the maximum weight that would allow a safe takeoff within the 1,860 meters available, taking into account factors such as air temperature, the airport's altitude, and the wind conditions of that specific day. The fuel was reduced to the minimum needed for the very short trip to McConnell, just a few minutes of flight. An official from the Wichita Airport Authority publicly stated that the company had confirmed, with all the engineering and performance calculations, that the takeoff would be safe under the conditions of that day. A tow tug was sent from McConnell to Jabara to help reposition the aircraft on the runway, turning it 180 degrees into the correct takeoff direction. On the way, the tug itself broke down and had to be replaced. Even that simple part of the operation did not go as planned. With the aircraft finally in position, only one question remained open: actually taking off. The next day, November 21st, 2013, a new crew boarded the Dreamlifter, already positioned and ready on Jabara's runway. As a precaution, local authorities closed streets near the airport during the maneuver, anticipating any need for extra space in case of the unexpected. At around 1:16 in the afternoon, local time, the engines were pushed to full power. The aircraft, much lighter than in normal operating conditions, began to gain speed quickly down the short runway. The takeoff happened without incident within the available space, exactly as the engineering calculations had predicted. The flight between the two airports lasted only 19 minutes. A few months later, in January 2014, a Southwest Airlines Boeing 737 landed by mistake at a small airport in Missouri, using almost the entire available runway of just over 1,100 meters. The Dreamlifter landed at McConnell right afterward, also without any trouble, closing an episode that had begun almost 24 hours earlier, the night before. Cases like this are not as rare as they seem. When the norm for that model of aircraft is to have more than 1,500 meters available to land comfortably. In December 1996, another 747, this one from Atlas Air itself, this time bound for an aircraft storage yard in Arizona, also landed at the wrong airport, about 19 kilometers from the correct one. The Kansas case, however, remains one of the most cited examples of how small errors, one by one, almost invisible on their own, can add up until they create a situation that seems impossible to explain afterward. And at the same time, it is a reminder that well-thought-out safety systems, combined with a good dose of engineering calculation, can solve even the strangest problems without anyone getting hurt.